from gestures to gadgets. And what I would like to cover in the next 10 minutes is introduce you to the Communication Bill of Rights, talk about yes and no communication, phrase-based communication tools, letter spelling tools, and then move into high-tech communication tools. First of all, before we jump into this, coming from the perspective of a speech language pathologist, it is evident to me that humans, all of us, from the earliest measurable indicators, from the time that we are infants, we are designed to socially connect and communicate with others. An infant's first words are the beginning of a lifetime of communication and intention to communicate. And even when the ability to speak stops due to a disability, we continue to have a constant desire for connection and social interaction. And that's the foundation of why I'm sharing these things. Whoever you are and wherever you're coming from this afternoon, as part of this symposium, whether you're a family member, you yourself are locked in. There are people here with varying degrees of movement and ability in the ways that you are communicating with your loved ones. And I want to acknowledge all of that. Um, each one of us and each one of you here have the right, the innate human right to communicate with others. Uh, there is a document called the Communication Bill of Rights, which was written by an organization here in the United States called the National Joint Committee for the Communication Needs of Persons with Severe Disability. Um, I have a graphic here of some of the examples of the communication rights that each of us have. If you would like to read this document, it is incredibly powerful. You can search online for the Communication Bill of Rights, and you'll find it very quickly. Some examples of some of the rights that you have are you have the right to connect socially with others around you, even if you've had a brainstem stroke and you're no longer able to communicate with your voice and your mouth. You still have the right to have access to communication. You have the right to participate in your medical decision making. You have the right to share your preferences. You have the right to refuse things. You have the right to have tools for communication that work for you at all times, whether that be in your home, out in the community, or other places. So if you haven't read this document, it is very empowering. It's called the Communication Bill of Rights, and I highly recommend it. What I'd like to start with are the basic yes and no communication. It is so important that each of us have a way to directly and simply communicate yes and no. So when somebody asks us a yes or no question, we have the ability to clearly and directly answer. So what does that look like for individuals here? Identifying a simple signal for yes and no. The first question I ask is there any body part that can move? And when I say move, it can be a very uh, small but noticeable movement. I worked with a woman once. Her indication for yes was she was able to very gently raise her eyebrow up, just slightly, but it was noticeable. So when she was asked a question and she wanted to answer yes, she moved her eyebrow slightly, and her communication partners were trained to watch. So she moved her eyebrow slightly for yes, and she relaxed and did nothing for no. In that manner, people could ask her yes and no questions and have a direct way to receive a clear answer. So, what parts of the body might be able to move, if any? Like I mentioned, the eyebrow. Some people can purse their lips or tighten their lips a little bit. Maybe they can move their tongue. Some people can make a sound with their tongue, a clicking sound. Some people can move their eyes. So some examples that I like to share are look right for yes and look left for no, or look up for yes and look down for no. Or you might pucker your lips for yes and relax them for no. So when someone asks you a question, you can give your signal for yes, or you can give your signal for no, and it can be noticed. Um, you can give any movable body part, however small, for yes, and do nothing for no. I'm going to hop into the chat really quickly. Okay, very good. Yes, the micro movement switch somebody mentioned in the previous uh, talk, and I'm interested to look into that. Um, let's talk about some example questions. Asking yes and no questions, we need to keep it very simple and very direct. One question to one answer. I'm going to give you a good example. So if you are a family member or loved one for someone with locked-in syndrome, a good yes or no question is just asking one question at a time. For example, are you cold? That's one question that elicits a yes or no response, and you wait for the answer. Here's an example of a question that's a little bit convoluted. Are you cold? Where did the nurse put your blanket? So you'll notice that's two questions in one. And the second question was not a yes or no question. So it's going to go unanswered. Or someone might attempt to answer it or look at where the blanket is, but it's not a direct communication. So keep your yes, no questions simple and one question at a time. All right, moving on. Next, I want to talk about something called partner-assisted scanning. So if you're not familiar with partner-assisted scanning, I'm going to describe it now. Write this term down. You can look it up online and learn a little bit about examples and how you might integrate it into your communication routines. So partner-assisted scanning with phrases might go something like this. You make a poster board for the wall or a paper, and on that poster or paper, you list common requests or common needs. The communication partner, so the family member or nurse, will hold up the paper and scan through each of the selections. When they get to the selection that the person who is locked in wants, the person who is locked in will give some sort of signal. It can be the signal for yes. So it might be raising the eyebrows when the assistant gets to the right request. I've seen people gone into people's homes where they have a big poster board, two big poster boards right up in front of the person with all of the common requests, and the family can scan through the poster board and watch the person who is locked in identify and give the signal when they get to the right request. So, for example, number one is suction. Number two is I'm hungry. I'm cold. I'm hot. Please adjust my pillows. So you can customize this poster or this board to the person's needs and have it reflect their most common requests. Doing any sort of partner assisted communication takes great patience and it takes sensitivity and good watching and good listening skills. And it also takes a lot of trial and error to get into a good communication rhythm and communication skills together. It takes a lot of practice. It can be slow, it can be frustrating. And that's where the patience and the practice comes in handy, where you keep at it. Next, I'd like to take this partner assisted scanning and move it to an alphabet board. Here's a visual example here. So you see that we have, this is in English, we have A through D, E through H. So you'll notice that each row is a different color. The beginning of each row starts with a vowel. So we have an A row, an E row, an I row, O row, U row, and then we have a row of numbers at the bottom. You'll see on the right-hand side, we have a space, we have start over, we made a mistake. So the communication partner holds up this board and starts scanning A row, E row, I row. As the person is scanning, they're watching their communication partner, the individual who is locked in, to give the signal of what row the letter is on that they want to use to spell their thoughts. So we scan row first, and then when you get to the right row, as indicated by the person's signal, then you scan columns. So we go A, B, C, D. So we scan row by column and we watch for the person to give their signal when we get to the right letter. This is a way for the person to do letter by letter spelling. Often as the communication partner, we might need to have a notepad to jot down words because this takes a lot of working memory and patience. And as you see, we have a button that says mistake. Mistakes happen, and we need a way to indicate that and a way to start over if needed. Sometimes it's okay to guess what the person is trying to say once they've started spelling a word, but we want to ask their permission because sometimes being interrupted like that can be a little bit frustrating. So again, this is partner assisted scanning using an alphabet board, and it takes practice and it takes some good memory skills. And I've seen many families become fluent in using this type of communication to communicate with someone who is locked in. Using that same concept, we have transitioned from letters into phrases. So this is a partner assisted scanning phrase board. You see here we have all sorts of common phrases, pillow, hot, cold, questions, hearing aid, glasses. You'll notice on the right we have a body on the front side, on top to bottom, left to right. So the person, if they are trying to describe their pain, we can go and scan through the body. Is it in your head? Is it in your neck? Is it in your shoulders? Is it in your abdomen? And we can scan through the body and watch for the person to give their signal to communicate with us where they're having pain. You'll notice next to those bodies, we have a number, numeric pain scale. How bad is your pain? Is it a 1? Is it a 2? All the way through 10, so they can communicate physical location and the degree of pain that they might be having. So again, this is partner assisted scanning. You can find examples of these type of partner assisted communication boards online. At the end of this presentation, I'll share my email address and I'm happy to email you some that I have as well. Okay. Let's move into E-Tran communication. An E-Tran board, as you see here from this illustration, is a clear, large plexiglass board that goes between the person who is locked in and their communication partner. And on that board are different letters and numbers. The partner holds this board up and watches the individual's eye movement, and they identify letters by watching each other's eyes as to where they're looking. They're looking up and right, they're looking down and in the center, they're looking up and to the left, and they can identify letters this way and spell words out letter by letter. This too is fairly slow and takes practice and patience, but I've seen families who master this form of E-Tran communication. This is nice because this goes with you wherever you go. It has handles, nurses, and other family members can be trained on this method of communication. Let's move into speech generating devices and talk about switches. Some people here, as I mentioned, have some sort of body movement. It may be minimal. It may be the pursing of a lips. It may be the blinking of an eye, maybe your eye movement, or a toe movement, or slight squeeze of the hand or arm. You may not have any of those movements and just have eye movements. So there are switches that will measure body movements in different areas to different degrees. Using a switch, people can access a communication device that has communication software. People might use their hand, their finger, a blink, their mouth, their head, their knees, their toes, and the software will scan through items on the screen, and you hit the switch when you want to select the item that it is showing on the screen. I'm going to show various types of switches now. This is an example of a head switch, someone sitting in a wheelchair, if they can move their head sideways. Now that takes a certain amount of control. That's what a head switch looks like. Here we have a micro finger switch that is Velcro to the person's finger, and if the person can slightly move their finger, they can activate that switch and select something on the communication device screen. Here we have a mouth switch. This is a sip and puff switch. So if you can blow or suck using your mouth, you can use that as a switch movement to activate something in a communication software. This one is newer to the market. This is a headband blink switch. So this will monitor when you intentionally blink, and it will also distinguish when you intentionally blink versus when you just naturally blink. Remember, blinking is a natural reflex that all of us have to do several times per minute. Some people will choose blinking as an indication for yes and no. So, for example, blink once for yes and blink twice for no. I don't always recommend that because we have to naturally blink anyway, so that method of selection is prone to error. Um, the AVA head switch has the ability to distinguish between intentional selection blinks and just natural refreshing our eyes blinks. So I think this is a great tool. Um, Down on the right, we have something called the NeuroNode. This is made by Control Bionics. I have a little bit of information about them in the next few slides. This is a company that has an eye tracker and a switch combined with a communication device and software to really monitor any type of muscle movement across the body. And on this picture, it's attached to their wrist. So if they can move their arm just slightly, just a micro movement, it can detect that. And again, the communication software will scan through items and you can select when it gets to the item that you want. I'm going to keep pressing forward and then I'll check the chat for questions at the end. Let's move on to speech generating devices that use eye gaze as an access method. So an eye tracker is at the bottom of a computer screen and it is monitoring the movements of the person's eye. The eye tracking camera captures the movement, and to use this, you look at the buttons on the screen and you dwell on them for a certain amount of time, and then it selects the button that you're dwelling on. Eye gaze is much quicker than other methods. It takes practice. It takes finding a device and a company that will really support and train you well. So it's certainly worth investigating if you are a person who has intentional eye movement, up, down, left, and right, or maybe just left and right or up and down. If you have the ability to control your eye movement, it's worth asking a speech language pathologist or speech therapist if you're a candidate for eye gaze. Using an eye gaze device, I've seen people type up to 30 words per minute. Here's an example screen. So you see that there's the eye tracking camera at the bottom, and we've got a full QWERTY keyboard. We've got phrases, we've got a speak button. So your eyes are moving around typing on the letters, and then you look at the button that says speak, and it will speak what you've typed out using the computer generated voice. Eye tracking has been well researched over the last several decades. It's been refined, and there are a handful of companies across the world that really have good offerings for eye gaze. So it's worth investigating that. And if you're a candidate for that, if you have intentional and deliberate eye movement. With an eye gaze device, using your eyes as the keyboard and mouse, you can control a computer. You can surf the internet. You can check your email. You can go on Amazon and shop. You can go on Facebook and connect with your loved ones on social media. And using these devices, we've seen many people who write books and tell their life story using an eye gaze communication device. I wanted to share a few reputable companies that are making and really pushing forward these devices. The top one there is Smartbox. They're based out of the UK. Smartbox has a variety of different types of communication devices and access methods. Their team is supportive and they are a good source of information, particularly in the UK and Europe. They're also in the United States. Next company is iGaze Inc. They're based out of the Washington, D.C. area. As far as eye gaze devices that are accurate and low fatigue and support for international training, sales, and training families abroad, and doing screening. Eye gaze is, I think, the best in the world.
Right on the top of it.
And then next we have Control Bionics. They are a company that has paired their communication device with their NeuroNode switch, and that switch can be placed on various parts of the body to pick up almost any type of movement, muscle movement, whether it's great or small. So these are companies that I would look into as far as communication devices. We have a couple more slides here, and then I'll jump into the chat and we'll wrap it up. iPad, Apple, as you know, has come a long way in their accessibility game, and they have many, many communication apps in many different languages on the App Store. Apple now allows someone to use head tracking and eye tracking. I found as a speech therapist, for someone with a disability, their eye tracking may not be robust enough. It's worth a try if you have an iPad available. Um, so give it a try. But as far as eye gaze or switch use, there are dedicated communication device companies that I listed in the slide previous that really have spent decades refining this. So um, I'm excited to see on the schedule that we're talking a little bit more about brain computer interface devices. Um, they're not widely publicly available yet, but they're research is moving forward. So I'm excited about more to come on that topic. All right, here's my name and my contact information. I'm going to leave this up while I jump into the chat. Again, my name is James. Feel free to email me. My email is jbrintonslp@gmail.com if you have any questions. And I'm
There's
going to
been
open up
one,
the
one
chat
question
here.
from someone called Hannah today who
Yes.
wonders whether it might be possible to incorporate an I don't know rather than just a yes and no, because quite a few questions apparently require an I don't know, I'm not sure, rather than a definitive.
Yes, Hannah, that is so valuable because yes and no is binary, and the response that we have is a spectrum. So if we had, let's say if it was someone who had full eye movement, they could look right for yes, they could look left for no, they could look up for I don't know, and they could look down for maybe or sometimes. In a yes or no question, Hannah, you're right. The answer is not always yes or no. It could be, it depends, maybe, sometimes, I'm not sure, yes, no. So you're right. Any sort of signal that the person can give, it could be purse their lips for I don't know, look up for yes, down for no, and close the eyes for maybe or sometimes. So yes, that's a very valuable comment. Thank you.
I don't know if we've had
Yes, it
any
would
more
change lives.
questions.
Mhm.
Does anybody else like to ask James anything, or would they like to post something? For those who have just joined us or are not really familiar with Zoom, there's a facility called chat. If you bring up the line that comes up at the bottom of your screen when you move your cursor, if you click on chat, that will bring up the chat room where you can just post any questions to anybody, or you can select who it is specifically that you want to speak to. So have a go at that if you'd like to speak to James, or you can contact him on his email that he's posted up on this screen now. And anything that you miss, contact me at my Brain Foundation email address and I'll put people in touch with one another. Okay, I think we're running towards the
Excellent.
time when we're going to hear Carmen